Okay, go ahead.
Okay, so the topic today is my presentation is a paper called Robustness in Deep Learning, the Good, the Bad, and the Ugly. So this comes up in the journal club after the last presentation where we have a neural network of any width can be approximated in the finality as a linear network, and the initialization, the revitalization that ends up as a Gaussian process in this presentation, in this paper, was neural tangent kernel. So this comes up after a suggestion that has a contrasting result in it with the last presentation. So, so this paper has interesting results, and let me explain the basics of the paper. So what we are interested in, the main thing is the robustness. And what is robustness? Robustness is generally understood as a system's resistance to change, to perturbations. And so this in this paper, I will define all this, and this, but in general, in this paper, the perturbation stability, that is the average robustness of the system, is analyzed under different initializations and different parameterization characteristics and lazy and non-lazy training regimes. Okay.
So Olcayto, one question about perturbation. What kind of perturbations are you talking about? Is it for the state of neurons, for the weights and biases?
It is the perturbations in
dynamics. What kind of,
in the training data.
Oh, it's on the training data itself. Gotcha.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So they haven't discussed any other perturbations in the paper.
Not that I'm aware of.
Okay.
It has a very large appendix. I haven't gone in detail, but nothing I see. Okay, so so width of the network we discussed in the last presentation, and the depth of the network is the number of layers of the neural network. And so there is a very interesting part here, and this is why it's called the good, the bad, and the ugly. So average robustness, I will define it in wide and narrow, deep and shallow, and lazy and linear training settings. For the width, in underparameterization, what is underparameterization? Underparameterization is when a system's parameters are not enough to deal with the complexity of the training set. And in underparameterization, the width has negative effect to system's robustness. In overparameterization, the width has positive effect on the robustness of the system. And the overparameterization, what is it? And it is the kind of opposite of underparameterization, when the system is too powerful for the data set, training set it has. And it can, this might result in generalization of noise or overgeneralization that doesn't work well in other data. So this is for the width. For the depth, this is what I find interesting. For the depth, only with the LeCun initializations, this is LeCun neural tangent kernel and He initialization is white initialization. So how the training starts, the white distribution of the whites of the neural network. And only with the LeCun initialization, they claim that the depth has only with it in this Gaussian distribution. They only look for this tree.
What is LeCun initialization?
I will define it.
Okay.
But these three are Gaussian distributions, and only with this LeCun initialization, depth has positive effect on robustness under the lazy training regime. For non-lazy training regime, and I will call what is a lazy training, and I will define it. But lazy training regime is intuitively is when the parameters, for example, trainable parameters bytes do not change fast, as I understand it. For this two initialization, depth has negative impact on robustness. So as the number of layers increase, the robustness is hurt. So, okay. For the third part, let me mention this briefly. For the non-lazy training regime, the others, because in non-lazy training regime, the depth becomes an intractable and a complex problem. They say they don't do it for it, as I understood it. So they only show the robustness characteristic under the non-lazy training regime. A two-layer neural network for. Okay. Okay, so what is perturbation stability? So this is the main definition because it assesses the average robustness of a neural network. So we have a neural network, F(X, V), and this is the white input and the activation function. And we have a data distribution and the perturbation radius epsilon. So this is the perturbations. This P gives us the perturbation stability. How? So it is defined as the expectation of a gradient of x times the x minus x dot, where this is from a uniform distribution that is epsilon away from that is epsilon radius ball centered at x.
Hold on. What is x hat? Is it the average x?
It is,
or it's a random variable. It's a random variable from the distribution.
Yes, from the random distribution, yes.
Okay, and well, I'm trying to understand what this is telling you. So you are differentiating, turning gradient of f with respect to x around x hat. Is that the idea here?
Yeah, the gradient.
What is x? What is x hat? See, like the problem. Yeah, what is x? What is x?
So
hat?
what I understand here is that when this stays small, we have a more robust system because
no, I want to understand the mathematics, right? On the right hand side of the equation, we have x and x hat. What do they do? So x hat is drawn from the distribution, but then how you can find expectation value with respect to it. And what is x? So I don't understand this formula.
Yes, this is the definition.
No, I don't. Yeah, I understand.
Yeah,
definition. I don't understand. What is x and what is x hat?
This x hat from the random distribution.
Okay, so you find expectation value with respect to the uniform distribution for x hat. That I understand. And then there is also expectation value from x with respect to x. So x should also be drawn from some distribution. So both of them are drawn from this uniform distribution. I don't understand this.
So it is from the data distribution, the x here.
Okay, so both of them are drawn from the distribution. One is from the data itself, and the other one is from uniform distribution.
Yes.
And then you see.
And for what distribution do you calculate the expectation value?
Both, apparently, because you see the e with respect to x and x hat. So you calculate expectation value with respect to both distribution, the data distribution and uniform distribution. I'm not sure I understand why. I understand why the gradient of f is relevant, because that kind of shows you how through the activation dynamics perturbations would either grow or decrease. That I understand. No, it's relevant. Okay, fine. I think I'm starting to get it.
Okay, so this when this is small, we have higher
Stable
average. We
right,
are the others take it as we have higher average robustness when this is small, and higher less average robustness.
Makes sense.
Okay, so definitions. What is lazy training and what is the Frobenius norm is used in the definition. So Frobenius norm definition is the measure of the size of a matrix, and it's defined as square root of the sum of the squares of all elements in the matrix. So lazy training ratio is shown by kappa, and we have this definition here. And as I understand it, for each layer, the whites and for each time step is added and divided by the initial white distribution values, Frobenius norms addition for each layer. So this, as I understand it, captures that the parameters. So when this is low, we have a lazy training, and when this gets higher, we get approaching the more non-lazy training regime, because the matrix, the difference between the initial conditions change more significantly under non-lazy training regime. Okay, so this is for example what others use the deep fully connected ReLU neural network, and so what is the Gaussian distribution of whites? So for example, in this first layer, so this is Gaussian. It is given. It says that this is a Gaussian distribution, W1, and it is zero mean and beta 1 square. So this is the notation, and M here gives the width of the network, and there is the size of the input vector, and O here, or some other thing, I don't know the name of the notation, I call it O, is this size of the output vector. Okay, so what is the LeCun initialization? It is when the variance for the first layer, the white distribution is 1 over D, and for other layers is 1 over M, and where M is the width, and the scaling factor is alpha is the scaling, is called the scaling vector here, is 1, and for other initialization is also 1, but for the second one it is 2 over D, and for other is twice the first one, and for the third one it is 2 over M and 1 over O for the output, is the dimension of the output vector.
So what is the reason for choosing all those variances and yeah, for the different layers?
So I don't really know the reasoning why these three are chosen. Well, I understand that this is the very used in the very popular.
No, I understand that. I'm trying to understand what is the analytical reason, because like what we really want is the variance of the output of the neurons would be to be for a 1. So I mean, of course, then you can just figure out, depending of how many layers come in, what the connectedness is, how to make what should be the variance of the weights such that that happens, and that's where the square root comes in.
Yeah. Yes.
Kind of random walk happening.
Yeah.
But I'm not sure quite. I understand what the difference between 1, 2, and it's like some ad hoc decision went there.
So they carry out the analysis and found out this answer. So without it, there is any before analysis, can it be known? I couldn't find anything.
Maybe it's just trial and error. They figure. Okay, it doesn't matter. I mean.
So
Okay.
these are the bound, and I will. So these are the bound for the perturbation stability, and how this bound is calculated. I will give the theorem regarding it, and I will come back to these bounds.
Okay, so Fikra wrote something saying that R to the O means output space. Yeah, I think this is right.
Yes.
Okay, go ahead.
So for the width, these bounds suggest that, and I will come to the analysis. I will give the summary of it, but you can see that with calculation, it suggests that with increasing width here, m, and you see the exponential minus m, the robustness first become worse, and after a critical point, it gets better and tends to be constant as this epsilon goes to 0, as the m goes to infinity and epsilon goes to 0. But for depth, it is more complicated. Under LeCun initialization, we see that as the number of layers increase, it helps to robustness, and the perturbation stability stays low. But for the other initializations, as the number of layers increases, and you can see it here, as the number of layers increases, the robustness is hurt.
But hold on, isn't this just a trivial result saying that, well, if you have larger variance in the weights, then there'll be a larger variance in the inputs of neurons, and there will be a larger variance on the outputs of neurons. So there's like, it's not about learning; it's all about initialization and what the distribution of the states would be. So is that all they're trying to do? So they are not looking of what the robustness would be once the neural network went through the learning. That's the difficult question, right? So do you want the network to be shallow, wide, deep, once it learned, not in the initial conditions? So do they do any analysis in that region?
As I understood it, this only pertains to the initializations.
Oh, okay.
Analysis.
Okay, that's fine.
Okay, so this is just notation. We take a fully connected rectified linear unit neural network with depth L, and this is the activation function, ReLU. And yeah, we have the standard Gaussianization, and these different variances includes our typical initialization scheme schemes. Okay. So how we understand the how we find the bounds based on the initializations? This is the major theorem of the paper, and given an L-layer neural network F-trained, for the convenience of analysis, if there is set alpha equals 1. So okay, so this is the bound, upper bound for the perturbation stability, P. So from this analysis, the analysis carried out, and they make some theoretical assumptions, and later they check that with numerical experiments. So I mentioned the analytical analysis above. So in the LeCun initialization, the depth had robustness in exponential order. But under the other initializations, the depth hurts the robustness because the upper bound gets larger. But for the LeCun, upper bound gets lower, so perturbation stability increases and average robustness increases. So P gets lower. Okay, so this is the thing that I discussed above. And they later check this with the numerical experiments. So this is the general outline of the paper. So they make some assumptions and they talk about the. So they make some connections to other papers that I haven't looked. And as I understand it, there are some results in the literature, and there are some contradicting results, and they say that this analysis elevates some contradiction.
So, Olcayto, so the conclusion is that width is good.
Yes.
Depth is bad, and for the robustness, right?
Yes, depth is bad.
And the conclusion is only about initial conditions, nothing about learning. So in the initial condition, but then my question would be, when just do the right initialization. Now, of course, if you have a large depth, then because of the random walk, eventually you'll get very large values at the output, and then you just have to reduce the variance, and then you'll be fine. Or maybe there's something deeper in that I don't quite understand, because it seems like trivial fact. Just the reason why your deep network performs worse with respect to the robustness is because you haven't initialized the right variance to the weights, and if you reduce it, then it should all go back to normal. Maybe I'm oversimplifying this, but that seems to be. Now, again, but I'll emphasize that what is not clear here, what would happen once the system learns, which one would be more robust. But I think this is not discussed here, so thanks.
Okay. So these are the results that I discussed before. So in here, so this is the lazy training ratio, and they see that with the increasing of width, this lazy training ratio is getting lower. So it turns to a non-lazy training regime as the width increases, and these are the numerical evidence of it.
So when does it turn to non-lazy regime? With what? With time, or with the width, with the variance, with width?
With the width.
With width, you get more variances in the changes of weights.
Yes.
Okay. Well, then this result is already about training. What happens with the state of the network once you trained? Okay, that's interesting. Yeah.
And so in here, the tendency with respect to time, which is taken as training epochs, and relationship with the width of the non-lazy training ratio. So here, there is this tendency that it first increase with width. It comes to the highest non-lazy lazy training ratio, and then later with width it decreases.
Decreasing means it becomes lazier, right?
Yes, lazier. Ratio decreases.
And again, there's no analytics to explain all this, just pure numerical results, right?
For the passing between lazy regime and non-lazy regime, I see only numerical results.
I mean, what lazy? Lazy means
I
that
don't
you
remember.
don't go far away from the initial conditions, and non-lazy means that your weights diverge a lot from the initial conditions. So
Yes.
That's all it is, right?
Yeah, there
Okay.
are some discussions regarding that, but I haven't delved that deeply into it. But I haven't seen.
How is this laziness connected to robustness? Do they have like a conclusion saying like, well, if the network is lazy, then it's more or less robust? How is it related to the first part of the talk?
So the analysis is not done fully for the non-lazy regime, because it is said that the non-lazy regime, the depth becomes a problem.
Well, but that's most interesting, right? So lazy regime means you're just where you started in initial conditions, and of course you can do the analysis easily. Well, the interesting part is what happens once you trained long enough, and then how would contribution from width and depth?
The numeric experiment is done for the shallow network, for the non-lazy regime.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, so is this it?
Okay, so this is just the numeric evidence of what I discussed. So here, for example, with this, you can see the width increase. So, for example, a shallow network, as I say, this is the LeCun initialization, the red one in this here. So this is the LeCun initialization. So you can see that this is the LeCun. You can see that as it increases, the robustness increases. Okay, so this is it.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Questions, remarks, comments? All right, we stop.